But to me, it appears like you wait till the people get there and they are in hardship or trouble, and then you try bringing them back to their home country. I want to know what you are doing to interrupt their process, or just try to prevent them from moving or getting themselves into trouble before you try returning them back home and then try to reintegrate them home. I think I'll leave there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alberta. We'll take one more from the back there from this gentleman. Please, your name, and you can just introduce
Shouldn't
yourself.
we maybe answer those ones, because then there might be
3 questions, then
All
we'll
right,
take
okay,
answers.
go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Yunus Solahuddin Wakpenjo. I'm with Marhaba Multimedia. I'm very happy we have Honorable Minister and the spokesperson for the President, Honorable Hamid. My question actually goes to the government, and the representative is here. You know, most often, what pushes these young men leaving Ghana or anywhere part of Africa elsewhere in search for greener pasture is nothing apart from exploitation. You know, we have labor exploitation in Ghana a lot, where people work more and earn less. And so when you work more and earn less, sometimes you suffocate. You feel like moving, because if I work for 8 hours and I'm forced to work extra without any pay, and I can work for 1 hour somewhere and get more dollars, that perception will push me to go out there, gather money and move. So I think if the government, upon regulating all those sectors, including the public and the private sector, you know, we all have minimum wage. That minimum wage thing, I don't think sometimes is applicable to some of the firms. So they give what they want. And because we have minimal employment rate in this country, where people are not employed that much because no firms to accommodate these people. So what happens is that, okay, let me work like that. So even if I'll be given $250 a month and I'm being exploited for nothing, let me work like that. If I suffocate, I will leave Ghana. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we'll take some responses from the podium now.
Right, so we go to the panel, and we'll begin with Enoch, and then we'll go to Wilmot, and then the minister will finish with the responses
So
in that
Enoch,
order.
they're asking whether you knew about the dangers before you left.
Thank you for your question. As a matter of fact, I have no idea. At the time, I know nobody in Libya. So it was a risk I took. I have no experience, no idea what is going to happen over there. No idea.
All right, Wilmot, the second question was for...
Yes, I think...
For Wilmot, yeah.
Thank you for your question. Before I attempt to answer your question, Dr. Tay made some assertions which were quite true, that one, the crossing on the Mediterranean is not just limited to the ones we hear, that you have, well, IOM have been able to map out these routes that are, especially across the Mediterranean. We have the Eastern Mediterranean route between Spain and, Ceuta, northernmost Morocco and Spain, and then the Central Mediterranean, Tunisia, Libya, trying to cross to Italy, and then the Eastern route, Western, Eastern, Central, and then the Eastern. This IOM, through our tracking of migrants' deaths worldwide, primarily through reports of deaths in newspapers, the radio, we track these things, as well as when we are able to rescue and save some migrants who are trying to cross the Mediterranean, we do ask how many set off and how many of you have been able to make it. And based on these numbers, at least we are trying to have an idea of how the situation really is. Because as Dr. Terry put it, these activities are done in a clandestine way, and it's irregular in nature, so it will be difficult for you to have accurate and reliable data on it. The statistics I have is that this year, as at 28th of November, we had gotten 3,033 deaths, migrants' deaths recorded in the Mediterranean. Now, 62 happened in the Eastern Mediterranean route, that's Greece, the Eastern Mediterranean route. 169 happened in the Western route, that is people trying to cross to Spain. 2,802 happened in the Central Mediterranean route. And this is the route that most sub-Saharan African nationals are using, including migrants from Ghana. Now, so this is just to add some kind of impetus into what we are discussing. The lady wanted to know why IOM would only wait for the migrants to get stranded in their transit and destination countries before we come in to help. I am sorry that this assertion is false, heavily false. As I did indicate in the beginning, we have worked with civil society organizations. In fact, the gentleman who came from Sahara Hustlers Association, we have worked with him. I see some other civil society organizations, we partner with them and carry out sensitization activities to educate people, especially the youth, on the dangers. We have a returnee here in the person of Enoch who did highlight that he was a victim of false information. He didn't know the kind of situation he was exposing himself to. And so we sensitize people on the dangers. I did indicate we have set up the Migration Information Center in Sunyani through collaborative efforts of the Ghana Immigration Service. There's also the Migration Information Bureau located at the Ghana Immigration Service headquarters. I also did indicate that they are proactive. They don't only wait for people to come and patronize their services, but they also visit these communities. So we are strongly on the ground. To also put it, IOM through our project, there's the Ghana Integrated Migration Management Approach project that we are implementing jointly with the Ghana Immigration Service. We have supported the Border Patrol Unit of the Ghana Immigration Service to enhance their border management functions by giving them some support in terms of vehicles, in terms of prefabricated offices, because we realize that, as you would all know, our borders are porous. And so if you do not tool or resource the Border Patrol's officials of the Immigration Service, smugglers and traffickers will have a field day. Now, we also do capacity building for the appropriate authorities so that they can also identify some of these irregular migrants who will try to outweigh them. Because, you see, in our case, it's a bit difficult. Because of the West African ECOWAS free movement, if somebody is able to really prove that he or she is a Ghanaian and is able to prove that he's only crossing to Togo to visit a relative, then it will be difficult for the Immigration Service to actually apprehend the person.
More questions will come, but the minister has to, the lack of jobs, we are told the exploitation and the wage. You work so much, you earn little. That was a question for you, Mr. Hamid.
Thank you very much. I'm not too sure it is a question. I think that it's a comment, and that comment is correct. It is correct in the sense that, quite frankly, wages are quite low in our country. And added to that is the fact that, if you want, successive ministers of finance have said that in spite of the smallness of our wages, we still are paying or are using 70% of our income as a country to pay wages and salaries, which are still not enough. Now, it's a chicken and egg situation. Is it productivity that gives rise to better wages, or is it the wages that will increase productivity? It's a chicken and egg situation. Now, our answer since last year and since we came into government has been that let us focus on adding value to the products, to what we produce in our country. And that's why we are doing this one district, one factory program, so that every district has a resource base in our country. And then if we're able to develop these resources, add value to them, and produce, we'll be able to increase household incomes. We'll be able to give better confidence to parents. Parents will be able to put money into the education of their children. Children will be better educated and better equipped with the relevant tools to stay in our country. So as a government, we agree with you. We recognize the points that you are making. And that's exactly what we are trying to do with all the kind of programs that we are putting out into the public sphere.
Thank you very much, Minister. Remember, the hashtag is the Migration Dilemma, GH Migration Dilemma. If you're tweeting, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, that's the hashtag to use. I see a lot of hands, but just hang on. I want to ask one question to Mr. Moa, who has been with us, and he's on the panel as well. He's not one of the audience, he's on the panel as well. Thank you for your patience. Mr. Amoah, do you accept what Wilmot has been saying, that the IOM works closely? You are in the business of helping returnees rehabilitate and reintegrate into society. How closely do you work with the IOM, and how difficult is your work?
Good evening to our viewers and the audience here. IOM has been a major stakeholder for some time now, alongside my other colleagues who are also from the civil society organization who are here. They've been supporting us alongside with other logistics and capacity building. But the situation on the ground demands more than what we are approaching. Over the years, the attempt has been to treat as symptoms, but not to the core. For instance, why would people embark on such journeys, go through these horrific situations, return home, and in the haste, they are taken back to the communities? I think the government should have even allocated Edward Park, bring tents, the military, so that they can provide them some form of security. These guys ought to be kept there for a month to help with their reintegration. They've got to go through some counseling. They pose a danger to society. You can't just bring people and all of a sudden you take them back. But there's a limit to what IOM can do. We should attach some form of quote-unquote seriousness to this issue of migration, because able bodies' life are going waste.
Please, when you are speaking, just hold the microphone close to your mouth so that we can also hear. I see a lot of hands on the podium. I'll start with the lady in the here in front, and then we'll try. Just keep it short. We'll try to get everyone ask the questions.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm the lady at the front. My name is Edith Kimani. I work with Deutsche Welle. And my first question, I suppose, is to the audience. After everything that we've heard here right now, how many of you honestly, just honestly, would want an opportunity to go to the United States, Germany, or the UK? Just raise up your hand. Okay. Thank you. So my first comment is, yeah, I understand that the question is not complete, but the issue here is migration, regular or irregular. And so my first, I don't want to open a debate, a secondary debate, but just, from a superficial level, how many of you would want to go, yeah? So my first comment is to IOM, which is sensitization is not enough, because there is still a willingness by young Africans to travel, whether it's out of curiosity or to find work. And the second question is to the minister. It's really interesting how you are accepting that as a government there are gaps, but I'm very disappointed with the African leadership. Today, I expected there to be a special summit by the African Union, because when the ICC was threatening to ruin the continent, you were able to sit down within a heartbeat. But 6,000 people are caught off of the coast of Italy, and no one says anything. So what actionable steps are you as the Ghanaian leadership taking? And can we expect a cohesive strategy in Africa to stop this trade where it's at? Because we're forgetting the aspect of human trafficking. What's happening to those people? Are they being caught? Are they being jailed? Are you in talks with the Libyan government? Or are we just leaving our people to suffer like Enoch?
Thank you. So I'll go to my left-hand side.
Right.
I'll take a question from the gentleman in glasses. He's had his hand up for a while now. Okay.
Thank you very much. And my name is Joseph. And my question goes to the minister. Mr. Walmart mentioned the benefits of migration, that migration is very important. And Dr. Tai also mentioned the policies that encourage migration. And statistics are showing from a recent study that over $585 billion has been gotten from remittances from developed country into developing countries. So with this, the regular forms of migration, for instance, the policies that he mentioned, are there any concrete bilateral agreements by the government of Ghana with other governments? For instance, an au pair system in Denmark or the guest worker scheme between Denmark and Mexico, and the government of Somalia with the Gulf regions. Are there any concrete bilateral agreements? And if there are, how are they publicized and how can people access this information for regular migration? Thank you.
So we'll take the last question before
All right,
we take
the last question, the third question, and then...
My name is Oko Ama. I'm a youth activist. Quick question. So my question goes to government commitment. Because, of course, today it's Libya and we're all talking about it. But within Ghana, human trafficking is real. And I know IOM works with a lot of civil society, so I know some of the realities. People sell their children for a basket of maize. When you travel, the very first time I traveled outside Ghana and I came back, people insulted me. Why did you come back? And this is the reality. So we are all part of the blame. Mm-hmm. But I want to know if USAID or the US ambassador can issue a threat that if government does not tackle human trafficking as it is, and that we are under the tier 2 watch list and it could be worse and all of that. And if we do that, if it gets worse, we stand a chance of losing some aid money. And he went to mention the amount. I mean, we are all Ghanaians and we care as much. If it gets to a point where, should I say, a superpower issues a threat that you lose aid money, if you do not take care of the lives of your own citizens, where are we heading to? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can also tweet at us at GH Migration Dilemma, because we cannot take all the questions, but you can tweet and then we can take them. We can take the responses now, most of them to the minister.
Minister, you're welcome.
Well, I'll take the issue of African leadership. In February, I was privileged to be at the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. And then the African Union, in deciding the issues that are relevant to the continent and how these issues should be tackled for the mutual benefit of the continent, talked about this irregular migration as one of those issues. And then appointed President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda to be, if you want, the lead mediator and, if you want, the lead advocate and the point person between the African Union and all of these European countries where our people hope to migrate and so on and so forth. And so there is, of course, a committee by the African Union, as I said, chaired by Yoweri Museveni. It's just that since February, of course, I'm Minister for Information, not Foreign Affairs. So I don't have up-to-date information as to what the Yoweri Museveni committee has been doing and how it is going about trying to stem this tide and so on and so forth. So whilst not entirely defending the leadership of Africa, I'm also saying that it is not an issue that they've closed their eyes completely to.
But, Minister, I have a problem with that. I mean, I don't want to... like, just a question. We have seen over and over, the African Union always reacts after something happens. This is not new. This has been going on for the last, 12, 15 years. Yeah, for as long as... But we have always seen that the African Union comes later. Something happens and they react, days. It's the Europeans, it's the EU that has been taking charge in this issue. just to ask, how many patrol boats does any African country have on the Libyan coast? How many patrol boats are there right now making sure that no African dares risk their life to cross not knowing whether they will make it or not? So these committees, I don't know, statements, they are good. The condemnation is good, but what action? What action is actually African Union or leaders doing? I honestly don't see any. And that's really frustrating.
It is. You know, you remember when we were in secondary school, when the African Union was Organization of African Union, OAU, there used to be a popular question in government and general paper that said the OAU is a toothless bulldog. Discuss. Those who are old enough remember that question. And so there is that general feeling, which you are re-echoing, that even the Libyan situation, the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi, which is what really has exacerbated the situation. Because I went to Libya in 1992 as a student leader for an African Students' Union conference. Even at that time, there were a lot of Ghanaians in Libya washing cars and doing all kinds of jobs. But the situation, we all agree, ever since the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi, has worsened and so on, because Libya has virtually become a failed state. And of course, again, you can blame the African Union for standing by and allowing foreign powers to come into Africa and remove our leadership that has resulted in the things that have going on. That's why I'm saying it's very difficult to put up a defense for the African Union and the kind of leadership that they offer to the African people. So I'm not in the business of doing that. What I want us to do as Ghanaians and as people who have come into government anew is that on our part, we recognize the responsibility that is on us to expand the Ghanaian economy, create the jobs that will give confidence to our young people to stay in our country. And if, as ECOWAS, we can develop the regional bodies first of all, I don't even think about the continent-wide AU. First of all, we have to develop ECOWAS, East African SADC. If we can develop the sub-regions and subcontinental bodies and make them stronger, open our borders, we allow people in the West Africa region to trade freely amongst ourselves, expand our markets. And West Africa, ECOWAS is very strong, East African Economic Union is strong, SADC and so on. Then we can have a continent that is also economically strong that will stem this tide. But that's a conversation for the long term. So I agree with you as far as that point is concerned. But as I said, after this discussion will continue for a long time, isn't it? So I can check with the Minister for Foreign Affairs, what is this that this committee that is headed by Yoweri Museveni has been doing on behalf of the African Union, and we can continue to have this conversation from here. As far as bilateral agreements are concerned, I don't know that there exists any such bilateral agreements where we exchange labor with countries for money that benefits both the individuals who go on these exchange programs and also our continent. The problem is that the areas in which we think we have advantage mostly is in the area of nursing and also medicine. That's where we see many of our people are well sought for in European countries and so on. But the problem is that in our country, we also don't have enough of doctors, enough of nurses, such that we can begin to have the luxury of shipping them out for money and so on and so forth. What I know that the labor minister, the current labor minister, has done in respect of fighting this human trafficking thing and so on, he suspended the activities of all these bodies or quasi organizations that take people to go and labor in the Gulf and so on. That has been stopped. I'm sure the immigration is nodding in approval, which means it is correct. That has been stopped for now. So we are doing what it is that we can to be able to stem the tide of this human trafficking. And therefore, the threat by the, what shall I call it, America, It's not what moves us to be able to act. But even for our dignity as Ghanaian people, it is important that we work to stop it. And we are doing it not because of America.
This is an interesting one. Someone else. There was another question that was raised.
It very much answers all three questions, yeah. It does.
That was it?
Yes, that was it.